Finally, there is a question of weight gain. As you know, during the DCCT, patients on intensive control were gaining weight. So the question was, does it happen with pumps? And as you can see, this is the Cochrane database, and any other meta-analysis showed the same. There is no increase in weight whatsoever. The reason why probably is because there is less hypoglycemia. Usually the major motor of weight gain in type 1 is hypoglycemia. Finally, this is my center. So here you can see, I'm sorry, too many pictures. Just concentrate on this one. This is all patients, so the whole patient population of around 600 patients. This is children only. 600 patients over from the year 2000 to the year 2008. As you can see, the drop in glycosylated hemoglobin was significant, and our mean A1C in our center now is approximately 7.2. And this is with pumps and without pumps. If I tell you actually that 70% of my patient population is using pumps, you can easily imagine that this low A1C, mean A1C, is due to the use of technology. Here is actually our data on glycosylated hemoglobin on the pumps. As you can see, when you start the pump, the A1C drops, and then it stays lower over 9 years. So it's a sustained effect. It's not like for a month or for a year or 2 years. It stays down over the years in this population, despite the fact that they go into puberty. Okay, so if I said a little bit now about the pumps, let's switch to the CGM, to the continuous glucose monitoring. I wanted to see a recent review actually about this, and this is a recent review. It was published in August, so only 2 months ago. And guess who published it? Actually, Andriani, a Greek lady who's sitting there with us. So I was extremely proud to see this review and actually to present it here to you. We have to remember that measuring glucose in the subcutaneous tissue, and we learned this today already, is not perfect. But you know, for a married person, we know nothing is perfect, right? I mean, so we have to use what we have. I'm a simple physician. I don't do experiments on the computer. I do experiments on people. This study nicely showed that if you actually inject glucose into pigs, you have a delay in subcu tissue, in fat tissue, and in brain by approximately 15 minutes, regardless of which technology you use. It's a physiologic delay. It's the time needed to exchange glucose between tissues. So at any time, actually, whenever you have a curve like an elevation and a downgrade of glucose in the blood, the sensor will be 15 to 20 minutes late. And if you measure at this point blood glucose here, inevitably, glucose on the sensor will be lower, maybe 3 millimole percent, which is around 60 milligram percent at least. This is not due to inaccuracy of the sensor. This is simply due to physiology, and we have to live with it. And vice versa, probably even more, let's say, disturbing is that whenever you're dropping, actually, your sensor will be way higher than the real blood glucose concentration. So this we have to bear in mind, and we have to teach our patients, actually, that this is the case. Right. So the first randomized controlled trial ever with continuous glucose monitoring was done in Europe, actually. We did it in 2004. We started, it was published in 2006. And the actual drop in A1C was so big that nobody believed us. We had really hard time to publish this, to be honest with you. Here, as you can see, it was a drop, and the difference here was 0.6%. It was MDI versus a MDI or pump with a sensor. And then the famous JDRF trial was published in the New England Journal. It was beautiful for the adult population. It was disastrous for children and adolescents. Please note that adolescents here are from 15 to 24. So they are pretty much the same attitude, actually, as we have in our center. And the adult population is above 25. The reason why it didn't work in children is that they used it only about 3 days a week at the end of the trial. And you know, if you don't take an aspirin, your headache doesn't go away. And if you don't wear a sensor, your A1C doesn't drop. So it's a very simple message. And then, of course, actually, when they calculated only those that use the sensor, and the difference was very significant also in children, as well as in the adolescent population. So it doesn't matter child or adult. The only prerequisite actually is that you really use the sensor. An interesting study that also corroborated this data was the Australian study, again from Fergus, from Melbourne. And what they showed is actually a significant drop in A1C, but what's important is they say, interestingly, significant glycemic benefit was seen only in the adolescent group, in the 13 to 19-year-old. So there is no question it works in any age group. Finally, the famous START-3 trial was published in New England Journal last year. It's a huge study. Almost 500 patients were randomized either to MDI or to a sensor-augmented pump. And yes, it was a beautiful decrease in A1C immediately after 3 months, and it was nicely sustained throughout the year. And this was true for the adults, and guess what? It was also true for children. So finally, actually, there was no difference in between the two. Children were using nicely the sensor in this study, and the result was expectedly comparable between the two groups. So it works. This is, by the way, our first patient on the old Guardian, actually. He was 11 months old when he started to wear continuous glucose monitoring in the year 2000. So what is the gain of all this? If we put this onto the same graph from DCCT, so this is the DCCT data, as you know, the endpoint was 7.2%, which is here, 7.2, but this is the rate of severe hypoglycemia. It was 66 per 100 patient years. If you put then the JDRF trial from 2008, the final endpoint was almost the same, 7.1. However, the hypoglycemia rate was only about 23, which is 3 times less. If you plot to the same graph the sensor-augmented pump study, the STAR-3, the A1C was almost comparable, yet the severe hypoglycemia was only 13, which is 6 times lower as the DCCT. So this is the gain that you get. You get a very similar endpoint, a very similar metabolic control as with DCCT, just 6 times less hypoglycemia. All right, so obviously there are other studies actually to corroborate this. This is a study from Italy. This is again comparison of sensor-augmented pump and regular pump in children in several centers. There's 300 children on sensor-augmented pump included from all over Italy, and they also show a significant difference in between the pumps and the sensor. And this is a study from clinical practice. Another question was important. Can we directly reduce hypoglycemia? So this study that we performed 2 years ago and was published this January actually was the primary endpoint time spent in hypoglycemia, below 63 or below 3.5, whichever you prefer. We randomized 120 patients to either continuous glucose monitoring or to a blinded control. And this is the result. So I'm sorry you can't see here. No, you can. So this is the time spent, almost 1 hour, this is in hours, almost 1 hour in the control group and less than half an hour in the CGM group. So we were able to reduce time spent in hypoglycemia by half. In addition, glycosylated hemoglobin, as you can see, this was a low glycosylated hemoglobin to begin with, dropped significantly to 6.69, to 6.7 at the end of the study with using the sensor. And this, of course, was significant, and this was a surprise. We didn't want to decrease A1C. We just wanted to decrease time spent in hypoglycemia, yet this is what happened. And here, actually, this was in our control group, around 55 patients within the ADA target below 7%, but with the sensor, actually, more than 75%, so more than 3/4 of our study population was actually within the ADA target range. Interestingly, a study was published now 2 months ago in Diabetes Care showing that not only you reduce hypoglycemia, but you also increase the adrenaline response. So you basically, not only that you diminish the time, but you can restore the mechanisms that are actually disturbed through hypoglycemia unawareness. So a very interesting piece of evidence in addition to this. Finally, we performed a study that was finished last year, a multi-European study. This design was crossover altogether, 17-month study, actually. And here, the result was also very nice. It was a comparison between pump and between sensor-augmented pump. So we wanted to see this netto effect of the sensor. As you can see, the difference in A1C overall was 0.43. For children, it was even better. It was almost 0.5. And this is the adult population. All this was very, very significant. So now we have a direct evidence, actually, that even if you compare pumps with sensors, actually, sensor can give you an addition 0.4% of improvement in A1C. And on the same graph, if we plot this study here, we had only 6 hypoglycemias per 100 patient years. A little bit worse outcome, just below 8, but only 6. So practically nothing hypoglycemia in this study. Finally, we also have a meta-analysis. As you can probably guess, it was performed by John Pickup again, the famous John from King's College. And actually, he put all the randomized controlled trials together. And yes, he had two different models, actually, both models significantly in favor of continuous glucose monitoring. So again, also for this technology now, we have probably 8 randomized controlled trials altogether. And we have a meta-analysis out of it that is significant, which is, again, by the standards of the ADA, a grade A evidence for this technology. Again, the more you use the sensor, actually, this is 5 weeks, 6 weeks, 7, I'm sorry, it's 5 days, 6 days, 7 days a week. The more you use it, the better is the outcome. If we conclude now this part, actually, we can say that also CGM is safe in all age groups. There is no side effects reported. There is one now actually reported that a severe hypoglycemia could be due to CGM, and we can discuss this, but basically no machine-related side effects. It improves metabolic control, it reduces hypoglycemia, and I didn't show the data, but there is data on quality of life. How's about clinical practice? I want to show you my first child. This is a 24-year-old child, diabetes for 20 years, glycosylated hemoglobin 6.9, very happy with his lifestyle, a very happy boy. This is his download from the pump. I will increase this for you. And as you can see, his mean is around 8, which is around 140. Most of the glucose is within the range. So he seems to be okay. If you go in 11 days and 10 hours, only 0.75 is above 8, and only 0.01 is below 4. So practically no hypoglycemia. When we look this a little bit further, actually, what we see here is, let's say, okay, so he is very euglycemic here, and then he has a meal, and this meal wasn't covered enough. So he gets an alarm, he gets another bolus, he eats again, and here, interestingly, he uses the bolus wizard. As you can see, active insulin is still here, so the bolus is smaller. Without this, actually, he would go to hypoglycemia. But with using the bolus wizard, which said, do not put the whole amount of bolus, reduce it by the amount that is still in your body from the previous bolus, the hypoglycemia was prevented. And please remember this. Well, but you know what? This boy, of course, is very active. And what do you think this is? It's 2 o'clock in the morning. What do you do 2 o'clock in the morning in Athens? Well, you know what? You're smiling. But what we do, I'll tell you frankly, we drink. And here he was drinking. And this is a typical example of vodka juice. So they shouldn't drink vodka juice. It's a dangerous drink. It would increase your glucose instantly.